some in particular user that wanted it and was willing to put in the infrastructure to get to it. The reason this portion is going through right now is because of the grant. If the grant didn't exist, then we wouldn't be pursuing it right now. And ultimately, the initial driver was to be able to utilize this water once we have our wastewater treatment plant producing recycled water, which was predicted to have been already done. But obviously we've had multiple delays, financial delays, engineering delays, and so the timeline sort of slipped on the treatment plant, whereas this one has a hard stop for grant purposes.
Okay. All right. That's all.
Okay. Other comment?
Thank you. Hey, board. I agree that he seems a bit premature. But several things I'm not really understanding about how this is structured. Is this water's going to Gallo? Why wouldn't they be funding the overage, $500,000+ to get it there, rather than having the district pay from capital reserve? It doesn't make much sense. Is there a contract in place where they've already agreed to purchase water? How, and if so, at what cost, and how much, what volume? Because that's going to have to be determined before you can say this can be paid back on whatever time schedule. If they're buying, 1 acre foot a month, what's going to take you 700 years to pay it back? So financially, none of this really makes a lot of sense. This doesn't seem structured very well. If it's going to be Gallo, again, why aren't they paying for it? If they want the water, pay for the overage up front and sell them the water at a reduced rate if you don't already have an existing contract. You can say, this is what it would be, but because you pay for the infrastructure, it's this much, which is less than everyone else that's getting this recycled water. So to me, the whole thing does not make a lot of sense, and it does not seem very advantageous for the district. You're also spending money now. You're committed to a contract for $1.25 million, $1.25 million, without having the treatment plant completed. So if there's anything that happens, anything at all, we have an earthquake that's swallowed everything up, where we just paid almost $1.3 million, got nothing out of it, and can't build a treatment plant because the land doesn't exist anymore. So it's risky to spend the money now, even though the grant has to be finished, or the construction finished by April 25. So it's very precarious. And again, the way that it's structured financially does not make much sense to the district.
I heard most of that, and I agree with it. If you build a pipeline before you have a contract or agreement in place for the revenue, you lose all your bargaining power. I mean, you have a pipeline that now you have to make some money off of, and they get to write their own deal with it, basically. It's almost like doing a favor for them with public money. It really doesn't make sense. I mean, once we're able to put water out there and they come to an agreement over an easement that you still don't have, so that's one hurdle. And then to come upon an agreeable price for what you're delivering to them, how do you know you're going to recover anything? You really kind of don't. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Very well. Okay, we already heard you don't have a contract. You supposedly have 200 acre feet that you're using right now for recharge, which the DWR wants you to want to do. They've been working on this for 14 years. I don't think there's anybody in this room that's been working on this as long as me. You're going to give up your 200 acre recharge, I don't care where it is, and you're going to try to sell it. So now all of a sudden you don't have any recharge. You're not doing anything for the basin or the river or whatever the case may be, and you're going to sell it so they pump less. That's a net zero. Whatever they say, you gave away. You didn't recharge, they pump less, it doesn't matter, it's zero. You're gonna pay for an easement on somebody else's property? Are you kidding me? I'd love it if somebody would come and build me a water line. I would use it for free. Who's gonna maintain the pipeline? Who's paying for the maintenance? We just heard about how many breaks are in the Nacimiento pipeline. Do you know that the Nacimiento pipeline has almost 4,000 acre feet of less capacity because of the repairs that are temporary, that have never been replaced? So they can't even deliver what they promised. And all these same companies, the ones that you're hiring, Whitaker, who's the highest bidder in this thing, is the one that's fixing all their problems. So you got a company that's the highest bidder, and you know why they're the highest bidder? Because they got all kinds of work. Because they just did a temporary repair on the Nacimiento pipeline by the Tascadero. They're doing another repair over on the Margarita Ranch under the Uruguayna Creek that these guys screwed upon. So, are you gonna repay the people, what is the sewer fees in the CSD?
108.
$100 and something dollars a month? So, are they gonna pay zero? Because you're selling what they pay to already clean to somebody else? If you're so worried about OPM, other people's money, a grant, that was given in 2022, here we are at the end of 2024. You've already spent 250 grand or whatever, 300 grand, and now you're gonna spend another, we get $1 million free dollars. It doesn't matter if it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere because they're gonna do whatever. We have 60,000 acres of too many grapes in the state of California. If you're not paying attention to what's going on in the community in this state, on how many wineries are selling, how many big companies are closing, what's going on with the different things, you must be in some other world, because we don't need to give wastewater so they pump less, but we don't recharge. You need to use your water for recharge. You should have spent $1 million to take it somewhere else to recharge it where it made it better for your community.
Any other public comment? Okay, board.
I have a couple more questions. So, this pipeline, it does trouble me that this pipeline is going to just one vineyard, is that correct?
So it terminates at Vino Farms, but it's, it can service both Gallo and Vino Farms, which are the only two vineyards that direction.
It would be a benefit, I know, I don't like that.
Pardon me?
I don't like that. That only services two, because Gallo is not the nicest player in this valley. So, I don't care for that, but, I mean, I am concerned that it's unfortunate we don't have the wastewater. Seems like we're getting the cart before the horse a little bit here. And the other thing that I do worry about is that we're not gonna be spending an additional 200 and some odd thousand. What's going to happen is they're going to be boring underneath the freeway, and they're going to hit some hard whatever, and they're going to say, oh, sorry. It'll just be cost you just another 100,000. We'll get it through. Because that's what I see with all this stuff over and over again. And these contractors, they do take advantage of the C.S.Ds, that's for sure. So, I can't say I'm ready to vote for this. If we want to, I'm okay to table it for, I would have a motion to table it for next month. So I can come in and talk to you a little bit more. But I'm just not, it just doesn't smell right to me. But we don't have the water to make all this happen yet. And you don't know when that's gonna happen either. We don't have a date of when we're breaking ground for the wastewater, do we?
Not currently, no.
Yeah. see,
And that's part of the problem with this, is that
Yeah, it's a big problem of this.
their trajectories were aligned previously, but like I stated, the other financial and engineering delays,
Yeah,
the treatment plant got held back, but this still is sort of, has that deadline, so it's still moving forward.
so what happens to our waste water then, if we don't use it for recycling?
So currently, the wastewater from the treatment plant goes to percolation ponds and percolates into the underflow of the river. If we don't have this line and we can't use this water productively somewhere else, then initially and probably for the foreseeable future, it would be going into percolation ponds into the underflow of the river, which, depending on who you are and how you want to look at it, it doesn't benefit us, it benefits Monterey County.
Yeah.
So, irrespective of that, you have the only options for disposal of recycled water is either using it or injecting it back into the ground into a known spot that can recharge things. So usually that means that you're drilling a well, you're injecting that water back into the ground, and then pulling it back out however many feet, miles, whatever later. In our case, that would mean putting in an injection well south of town so that we can inject it south of town and then pull it back out through our wells in town. So there's an obvious cost to that. The most cost-effective and probably highest rate of return would be selling the water, but there's issues with all of it.
Yeah.
There's no one clean way to do it.
Yeah, there's too many ifs, and there's too many, what ifs, and I don't, these vineyards are changing in the landscape right now. It's to say that, they will want to use it later. Maybe they sell it into something else or do vacant, I don't know. But there's just too many ifs. So anyway, I would be open to, I don't know how you directors feel about this, but I'd be open to table it for next month. We could discuss a little bit further.
Is that a motion?
Oh, yes, that's a motion, yes.
I agree with you 100%, but I think this should be tabled until 2025, because there's too many things going on here. I mean, it don't make sense, Let them keep that grant, because that grant is gonna end up costing the district probably $2 million at least.
So we can table it till November based on the motion of Director Gregory. In the meantime, we'll look at what happens if we don't do anything. But I have a feeling that if it's not approved, I'm not saying to approve it or disapprove it or whatever, but if it's not approved in November, I don't think there'll be enough time to actually complete it by April. So if it gets pushed to December, and especially if it gets pushed to January, then you're at a high risk for a high outlay and no return because we can't satisfy the grant. So at that point, it would really be a discussion on what to do about denying the rest of the grant. And we can bring it back in November for your request and bring back as much information as possible on what would happen to the rest of the grant.
I need a second.
I'll second your motion to table it until November.
Table to November.
by Director Gregory, second by Director Smiley. Okay, Director Collins,
Yes, to table.
Director Davis,
Table it,
Gregory? Yes.
January.
That'd be tabled to November.
and it was Smiley.
I don't,
Yes.
Trying to sneak in.
4-0 with one absent.
Mr. President,
That's gonna be November.
Yes.
I just do want to say also, I thank everyone for input on this project, and I do agree. You know, we want to make sure we don't have pretty much a dead pipe sitting in the middle of the field. That's not connected to anything. No sewer plant, no vineyard customer.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
I think when I look at the project and everything else, I think it's unfortunate we couldn't have ended up having a recycled water pipeline out to the school or out to the park in town or any other recycled water customer potentially. That would be long-term in our community.
Well, so with anything, once you get started, it's
I know.
easier to add on to it than it is to start it. So, you know, we can, in the future, you can add on to things, but at this point, this is what we're talking about, and we're going to table it till November.
And I think you also really do need to have some form of commitment in a written agreement with these peak parties.
absolutely. I agree.
I have a question, Kelly. Does by delaying that, put in jeopardy our grant for the building of the sewer plant?
So one's not related to the other.
Okay, so.
However, you know, as far as funding goes, one is not related to the other.
Okay,
However, part of the intent of the treatment plant was to be able to reuse that recycled water through irrigation. So it may change the initial cost of construction of the treatment plant to build percolation ponds that were essentially estimated to be built later because we weren't going to need them initially. So there, I mean, everything has a cause and
I
effect.
just change things. Okay, all right. Number 9,
So this item is related to the last item, and I would request that you table it also to November. We would have to have public comment, but
public comment on number 9, recycled water pipeline project, management and environmental compliance, monitoring and related budget adjustments by resolution 2024-52 by 3/5 vote.
Thank you, Board. Yes, obviously it is related to the last item, and I don't know why there wasn't an alternative to the other item where you would take this water to somewhere else that would benefit your community and the basin, which is what the DWR wanted. The Department of Water Resources wanted recharge, not reuse. Everybody in this community uses water that's pumped from the ground. If you return it to the ground, it's a net zero. You're putting back what you took. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of loss, but it's not beneficial to somebody else's project. It's beneficial to what's beneficial to your community. This is what the whole thing's about. We got so many things going on in our state, in this county, with surface water not being delivered, and then they wonder what happened with recharge. You know that the Salinas River for 75 years hasn't flowed the same way because the Army Corps of Engineers sent our water down to South County. And you wonder why we don't have the recharge. So we're asking everybody in this community, including you, to do recharge, which is stormwater capture or using your wastewater to recharge. That should be your primary project. And if you, at some later date, build more of your community to make it bigger, and you redevelop your sewer plant, that should add to your recharge that helps your groundwater situation, not help somebody else on doing something else. So I would hope, you know, in 2019 there was a bunch of letters. I have all the letters, I could give them to you, that were sent to a bunch of people that Governor Newsom appointed to different boards, from J. Lore and a whole bunch of other people. 2020, J. Lore said, San Miguel is way on the way to completing their wastewater facility, and they will have blended water, and it's just around the corner. That was 4 years ago. You ain't done nothing yet. I have the letter. I said it in front of him. I sat 10 feet away from him, and he couldn't answer the question. Because it's easy to write a letter and lie to people that you give a bunch of contributions to that are going to fund whatever you want to fund. And this project shouldn't have been funded. I want you to have the $1 million. I want you to get the $1 million. But I want you to spend it on something that's going to benefit your community. It's not going to benefit Vino Farms LLC that's worth $82 million a year, or Gallo, or anybody else. It should benefit your community. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that in 3 weeks, you're gonna have another board meeting because you move forward. Is that correct? So in 3 weeks, I mean, I'm sure this has been well thought out and presented. I don't know what new information he's gonna come back with in 3 weeks. I don't think that that's even possible. But if you don't have commitment and investment from those two agencies that you want, and those two companies that you want to sell the water to, then nothing here has changed. There's no reason to have another discussion about it. And as far as your comment, I can't imagine how much screaming there would be if parents found out that recycled water was coming out of the sprinklers on the school grounds. People wouldn't buy into that this time. They have their own well. They wouldn't be interested anyway. They built an irrigation well, I don't know, close to 20 years, well, not 20, but a long time ago. They would not be interested. You guys, you need to just scrap it for that.
Any other comment? Board?
Mr. President, two things. One, I actually did work in utilities down in South County, and it is actually very common for schools to use recycled water. Part of my job was actually inspecting those systems, making sure that they met certain state compliance and standards. It's very common in agencies that do have purple pipe networks, and they don't get pushback or feedback or things like that. One thing also that just thinking, because I want to make sure I was listening to our public comments. Mr. Graywall did bring up an interesting point about recharge. If I remember correctly though, back in, I want to say 2018, I can't remember the exact year, but we did study, recharge basins and things like that. Why can't we use grant money to go and actually secure, do things like that? And I mean, I'm dating myself a bit because that was a long time ago. But, those things do exist. I know we have looked at them in the past.
So,
And I know we're dovetailing a bit off of U.S. environmental compliance, but I just want to make sure that
so the basic answer is yes, and we want to pursue those types of things. We want to pursue overflow basins for the river. We want to pursue all kinds of things, but that's not the discussion we're having today. And we can definitely agendize that to bring that back around for the board to, understand where we are on those things. For this particular item though, it's for environmental compliance and project management, which I'm requesting to table.
absolutely. And it's just that the cost of this is going to get tacked onto the other item. It's going to become discussion. And honestly, if you don't have the contract or we don't have alternatives for the grant, I mean, it's just staff trying down the drain in November. That's kind of what I was looking at, So, I want to make sure that the next discussion on this, regardless of one way or the other, is productive.
Well, the district manager has asked us to table this, so let's the board.
I'll motion to table to November.
No second.
A motion on the floor by Director Collins to table to November, second by Director Gregory. That is item
Excuse me,
10.9.
excuse me.
Sir,
Is the general manager allowed to make a motion or shouldn't
He
he?
didn't, he requested.
Director Calvin's made a motion. I requested it be tabled. Director Calvin's made a motion, seconded by Director Gregory, and now we're taking
Gonna
a
vote.
to table it to November. This item is related to the last item, and there's no discussion, no necessary discussion based on this item.
A motion on the floor, Director Calvin's, to table this item 10.9 to November, second by Director Gregory. On the vote. Director Calvin's,
Yes.
Director Davis,
Yes.
Director Gregory,
Yes.
Director Smiley.
Yes.
Passes 4-0 with one absent.
Going on to item 10. Request for proposal, St. Lawrence Terrace booster pump station design by board consensus.
4-0-1.
This item is to authorize general manager to release request for proposals for the San Luis Terrace booster pump station design. This is a project that's been through different approvals from the board, most recently to purchase the property or purchase a permanent easement from the county for the property to build this project. The proposal is at this time to release an RFP, excuse me, release an RFP to get bids for the proposed project to design the project. After the proposals are received, they would be, a recommendation would be brought back to the board, as with all RFPs, and it would be the board's decision to pursue it or not to pursue it.
Thank you. Director Collins, you have a comment on that?
I know generally I've been waiting to make sure I hear everyone before speaking, but I have heard repeatedly from certain people, including my dental hygienist in the past, about how much they really want the additional pressure on the terrace. So, and I gotta tell you, getting braces and having them tightened while they're saying this town really needs more pressure in the terrace is always a fun time. So, this has been something that's been on our project list for a long time, and I really think it should happen.
Director Gregory?
No, I'm very excited. I'm looking at page 361, our current pressure zone demand. Current is 13. By 2030, we're going to need 77. By 2035, we're going to need 94.
Those are gallons a minute.
Those are gallons per minute, okay? Right, yes, gallons per minute. But I did hear the pressure is like, what is it at, 22 or something? Or?
The low pressure over there is around 22 to 25. The higher pressure is maybe 38.
And what's good pressure?
The main part of town has 65 to 75.
Oh my gosh, oh, that's awful. Gosh, those poor people. Yeah, no, that's no bueno. So, yes, it's well needed. Yes. No, that's my only comment. Yeah, happy.
I know the fire chief has talked about low pressure on that side of town before here, and I think it's needed for sure. Director?
Yeah, okay, the way I understand, this is from talking to you. You want to put that 1 million gallon tank up there on Power Road, right?
250,000 gallons of yes.
Okay, yeah, you want to put it up there on Power Road.
Yes.
And where's the booster pump? Where do you figure out putting the booster pump?
It would replace the existing pump house that's on the corner of
Yeah, I asked you about, yeah, you said it had a booster pump in it.
It has a 2 horsepower pump in it.
Yeah.
That no longer
okay.
serves as a sort of-
I understand, but my problem is, so it's gonna be a long time before you put that 250,000 gallon tank up there. I mean, if you can use, there's a 50,000 gallon tank sitting up there, and you've got a pump that pumps into it. I don't understand why you can't put a booster pump right in that area there from that tank and so on. And that would solve the problem, you know, as far as pressure. I mean, just don't make sense.
So I would direct you back to the alternatives analysis that the board reviewed and approved several months ago. One of the options was exactly what you talked about, having a pressure or a booster pump at the well site there that drew water from the 50,000 gallon tank.
Right.
The problem with doing that long term is that 50,000 gallons will no longer be enough, and you're also basing your entire supply off of one well. So when that well has a problem, then you have no water. Right now, the reason that the pressure is so low over there is because all those homes are relatively close to that tank in elevation, and they don't have enough gravity to create pressure, whereas the rest of town is dramatically lower than the tank. Based on the alternatives analysis, the leading proposal was to build a tank at the corner of River Road and Power Road with a booster pump at River Road and Power Road. The second alternative, or the other leading alternative, was to build a booster station at Power Road and River Road with a with a tank farther out on Cross Canyon where it would be able to get enough pressure to provide pressure head back to the terrace. The issue with locating the tank farther away from Power Road, River Road, or keeping the tank where it is that you end up having to build an extensive pipeline to get to that tank. In order to bring more water to that tank to feed a booster station at the terrace well, you would have to build a new line from the bridge to bring water from our other wells all the way to the end of Martinez, which is roughly, half a mile or something.
Now, Kelly, you told me that water to that tank, you had to mix it because from the wells over here comes from that big tank on the west side of the road and so on. That was back when you was claiming that, the water in the SLT well was condemned or contaminated or something, and you had to mix it. And then, now lately, you haven't had that problem. So, so that's exactly what you told me.
No,
Kelly.
I know what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
yes. When we had a problem with arsenic and nitrate in that
Right,
well
right,
specifically, it
right.
had to be blended in order
Yeah.
to be used.
But now I don't, right?
We don't. But again, you either need to have more wells built around the terrace well to pump into that tank, or you need to install a water line from that tank all the way back